next step is a drive line today, and I went over to a store called Tractor Supply and picked up a bunch of parts. One of the bigger parts that I picked up was a bushing that we're going to need to use on this. Bring this over here so you can see what we're talking about. On this sprocket, we need to have a bushing that goes inside the sprocket, because the sprocket is a 1-inch diameter, and we need to fit our 3/4 inch bushing in there. So they happen to have these bushings. They happen to have these bushings, which are spacers, which would fit right inside the sprocket here. So put our pretty tight. We have to, there it goes, polish our 3/4 inch shaft so that it fits nice and loosely. But then it goes inside this 1-inch hole right here on the sprocket. And the purpose of this is that it's supported when we are putting it on the sprocket, putting it next here, next to the wheel. And what we're going to want to do is take a bolt, 2 sets of bolts, drill a hole through this, and it mounts it to the wheel and keeps it from turning. We'll have a spacer as well, but the bolts will do the transfer of the load from the sprocket to the wheel. But I didn't want to have this sprocket totally unsupported, sitting out in the air, and this bushing will also help locate it. Okay, the next thing we're going to do here is push the bushing into it. Just in case you're wondering how much this bushing was, it was like $3. So then we're going to put, what's that?
Can I see it?
See the rock situation? I will in a second. So we're going to try getting this bushing put inside this sprocket. I'm using a rubber hammer, as you notice, not a metal hammer. Okay, what we're going to do next is make the bushing. We've got the bushing into this sprocket, and now we're going to make sure it's loose. And as you can see, it's very, very tight. So that's not a big deal. We can take a shaft that we have like this, and we can take some buffing compound and put it on there and put it inside here, basically lapping compound, and we'll work it free and get it looser. Okay, what I have here is some lapping compound. It's basically used for, it's valve grinding compound, is what it's called. And we're going to put it on this and get it out of the thing. Okay, I've got some lapping compound, and I'm putting it on the shaft, and I'm also going to put it on the inside of this bushing that we just purchased. And the reason for this is it's acting like a file. It's going to grind off any excess. We want this pulley to spin nicely on the shafts, and we don't need this to be a headache and cause it to be seized up. So we're going to work it till it spins freely. When we get back, we'll have it freed up better. Okay, another method for getting this to happen quicker is to take an impact wrench, put some lapping compound on the bolt, and then put it in there, and then use an impact wrench to fire it through and loosen it all up. Okay, here's the next big problem. You got a really deep hole inside the sprocket, inside the wheel, and you're trying to figure out what the hole the hole centers are, and it's really difficult to get a tape in there. See, I'm like fighting this tape, and I can guess it looks like it's 4.5, but I know that 4.5, if I do 4.5, that might not work. I might have issues. Now, I'm not going to scare you and say that if you drilled 4.5 that it's not going to work. It probably would, but the better way is to get as close as you can. So stick some long bolts in there. They will sit flat, and then get a measuring tape out. You'll probably need someone to help you. Unfortunately, I don't have someone to help me right now, so I'm going to use a tape like this, and I put it on the 1. And what I've got here is 5 3/8, and I've got to take one off of that because I measured from the 1. So it's 4 3/8 is what the center is. And I can do a quick approximation, take a look at what I have and see if 4 3/8 would actually do it. And 4 3/8 is what we want to do. So, what's the next step? We've got to diligently lay out a 4 3/8 center line system on here, drill some holes in there, get some long bolts, and fix it to that wheel. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is use wood. Wood is our friend. And so we're going to scribe out the center lines. We're going to use wood as our basis, as our template for drilling out placing the holes on the sprocket. So we know it's 4 3/8. So 4 3/8 divided by 2, because I don't trust my math, I use a calculator. 4.375 divided by 2 is 2.1875. Drill, and I'll scribe like that, and put it on the other hole, and scribe. Okay, so that will be our center line. Then I'm going to take a pencil and scribe from center hole to center hole that we're going to drill, and that will be our center line right here. Got our 2 holes, our 1 hole here for the bolt, our 1 hole here for the center line, our 1 hole here for the other bolt. We're going to drill the 3/4 inch, then we're going to drill the other holes that go in here, the smaller ones. We have yet to decide what size bolt. Okay, so we drilled our first hole, and our pin fits into this hole like this, and then our sprocket would fit on there like so. We would use this as a template then. We'd actually use it on the other side like this, and then put it down like so. As we have our other 2 holes drilled, then we can use that as a point of reference and pound holes into the sprocket. Okay, we drilled out the center lines. As you notice, it's not perfect. Doesn't have to be perfect, just needs to be, because the reason why it doesn't have to be perfect is the bolts are going to be going off, and a little bit of angle with the bolts is not a big deal. So we've got the bolt, which is 3/4. We're going to put it into our bushing. Notice I have the bushing in there from before, and now we're going to put it into a vise and clamp the whole system together, and we're going to drill out the top hole. We're going to try not to move the wood around. And at least we got a good start to it. So we'll put the remainder, probably finish this off on the drill press, because it's tough metal, you know, it's hardened stuff. But at least I have a good start on it. We'll drill it through on a drill press, and then we'll come back, turn it around, put a bolt then in this hole, and then we'll drill the other side. All right, so now we're going to drill through. As you see, we have an issue with it. Okay, so now we put a bolt through the 1 hole. We've got a 3/4 inch bolt which goes through the sprocket, and then we're going to use this hole that we drilled before as a pilot. So make sure everything's cleaned off, get it all centered. because if we don't get it centered right away, it'll eat right through the wood. Make sure everything's lined up. So there we are, our 2 holes. And now we can get it to line up with the sprocket. I mean with the wheel. All right, now we have the sprocket ready. As you can see, there's a boss that sticks off of this. We're going to put the sprocket on like this, and there really isn't a lot of clearance between this wheel and the sprocket tooth. So what we need to do is be very aware that that's going to be an issue. And the other problem is that when we crank down on these bolts, it's going to push the spacer up and drag this whole thing down. So we have to be very aware that that's going to occur. So we cannot weld this bushing onto this sprocket. So these are just things that you need to have going around your mind. What's going to happen is we're going to have some tubes. We're going to drill some. We're going to have some pipes. We're going to cut them, and they're going to be spaced out long enough to keep the sprocket the distance that we want it away from the wheel. So that's our next concern, is to figure out how far away we want the sprocket so we can actually run chain and not chew up the tire. Alright, so now we're trying to figure out how much space we need for the sprocket, and you can see that we will be rubbing. So we're going to get some bushings and put them in there and see how high we need to go. I would say that there. So we put the sprocket on there, and that should be a decent amount of distance chain in this, so don't think this is going to be the deal, but I want to make sure we have enough clearance. So what we're trying to do is measure the depth from the top of the sprocket to the base down here. We're going to do a couple of measurements. We also need to do a spacer from the face to here, so that's going to be one measurement, but we're going to need the other one, so we're going to use a dowel. So we're going to hold it right here. I got a pencil, and we can mark the top, and perhaps I can get the pencil dead there, Jacob. So our spacer should be 5 inches, and our bolt needs to be at least 6 inches. You can see that, right? Because the bolt needs to go above, so we need at least a 6-inch bolt when we go to the store. Okay? Well, what we did, we didn't feel like going to the store, but we do have some bolts sitting around, and this bolt happens to be 6 inches. So we're going to use this bolt length, and unfortunately that means we got to drill out this hole and the hole in the rim. So not a big deal. We're just going to do that. We're going to grab our drill and we're going to drill it. We have the bit, so we'll get out our mega drill, which is way over here, and we'll be back. Okay, so we're going to drill through this rim. See, it really wasn't a big deal. So that's 2 holes down. So now we're going to drill holes in the... Okay, this is where it gets tricky, because this is Alright, we went to the store and we bought a couple of things. We bought a 5-inch pipe and another 5-inch pipe. And we bought some long bolts. So we'll stick our long pipes in here. And then our long bolts will go into the pipes like this. So it goes into the holes like that, 1 bolt. And then this goes into the other pipe. And it bolts on just like that. So the nice thing about this tire is that the air thing's on the outside. Some of the other ones it hasn't done. So then our next, this is how it's set up. Got plenty of room for our chain. Okay, this next step is to make sure everything is lined up well. And what we're looking for is the the sprocket to be waffling like this or going up and down, and it's not, and that's a good sign. Okay, so that means we're pretty much set to set it up onto the Go Kart. So our next, like I said, our next move will be to put an axle on this Go Kart. And we're going to need to put it on, this is relatively where it would go. We're going to need a longer axle. And the reason for that is for the bending support. So this is actually going to penetrate into the framework, and then we're going to clamp it down inside and outside. We're going to have a board here, possibly even two boards to provide it better support. We may even have a little bit of buttressing from sideboards to give it more load-bearing ability, especially when you slam on the brakes and when you slam on the gas.